actually, we'll get to that, but that was an Alleman. It was inherited by Allemans until it was sold for the development. And as I gave my son Michael 2,000 to equalize his position, I gave to my son Michael R., who's another Michael, 1,000 and to remain in said property as a widow's dower for my wife Catherine. Third, I give and bequeath to my son Joseph W. Alleman, which this is the one that really set it apart. My other part of the farm, which he now occupies, where the new buildings are erected on, and the property which he purchased from Peter Wilhut for the sum of $5,200. And he said, I don't want, this gets boring after a while, which I leave $2,000 to said Joseph, that's the one with old Walnut Hills, to make him equal with my other sons. $800 remain in said property as a widow's dower for my wife Catherine. Fourth, it's my request in order that my beloved wife Catherine have a widow's seat in the new building of Joseph W. Alleman. I was so excited because I knew Walnut Hill was the new building. I mean, I never knew that until then. Probably during her natural lifetime, as long as she and the said Catherine remain my widow, with the following privileges. One room in the basement and the cellar, in the hind part of the cellar. I've been trying to think of where that would be. Now the cellar at this time was dirt, and anyway, I can't figure out where that would be, but in the hind part of the cellar. Excuse me, I keep losing my privileges. The room above the basement cellar, which Joan and Ed, since they have it now, the room above the basement she was to have, and the northwest room upstairs, which she now occupies. That would have been the second floor. No, that would have been, if you count the cellar as one, it would be the third floor, but we never did count it as one. But she was to have all the household furniture that remains that she wanted to pick, that she wanted to have. And this was interesting, which I didn't know either. If you've been by Walnut Hill now down Longview, you know there's springs down there, and there's a little wooded area. It's little now, but it was fairly big. And that is what he's going to mention now. He said she is to be furnished firewood by my son Henry Alleman. That's the one on Reliance. To have it cut in the woods on Joseph Alleman's farm at the request as much as my widow may and shall want to own or use for delivery. And you're supposed to deliver it, cut it, and deliver it. Catherine, my widow, will have 1/3 of the garden, such part as she shall and may select. My son Henry shall furnish my widow, now Henry's in Reliance, shall furnish my widow with fruit from his farm, if any grows. I like that. If any grows thereon, for family use. And it is to be understood that Joseph is to furnish the timber for the woods, as mentioned above. And then we go on, he was having the sons keep the daughters, give them money and stuff. So anyway, it gets, so she had 1/3 of the but what got me is when you look down there, there's timber there. It was literally timbered when Betty was there, but it's a wooded area. We loved to go down there when I was there. And it talks about Joseph Alleman's new farm, which was built in 1856, and this is what we'll talk about Walnut Hill. Joseph was born in 1835, and he died when he was 58. He married Margaret Rebecca Royer. They had 2 children. The first one was Horace, and the second one was Catherine Kate. Now this was interesting that I found. down. Now this is getting to where it's Walnut Hill, so, which I might as well tell you, it wasn't named Walnut Hill. When I married my husband, he was Richard L. Shireman Jr. and Richard L. Shireman Sr. and Betty lived in the farmhouse. So anyway, when we bought it and we moved there, we kept getting all the mail for his father. So just a quickie, that's why we named it. That's why I named it Walnut Hill, because we have a whole lot of walnut trees around and everything. And it would distinguish between his father and mother. I found this is like a little sidebar, in the 1880 census for Lower Swatara Township, it's on 89 acres, which is what Joseph had at that time. Joseph Farm, it was actually listed, which I remember they used to do in the census, aside from saying who was living there, and their names and their ages. But it has Joseph tilled 65 acres, and he had 15 acres of woodland, 5 hogs, 4 milk cows, and 7 horses. And it showed that what he was selling, I would imagine, he sold 1,260 pounds of butter, 280 dozen eggs from 40 chickens, and 6 quarts of wood that were cut, and 30 bushels of potatoes on a half acre, which is pretty good, and 10 bushels of sweet potatoes on an eighth of an acre, and apples from 2 acres of apple trees that were there. Now, originally the farm, Walnut Hill, had orchards down in front. They had raspberries there too, and which we used to walk. There's a large, I'm going to try to describe Walnut Hill Farm, which I have pictures of here that you may look at and just look through. I don't care. Let's see. There's a large stepstone of one which I don't have a picture of. I have no idea why. That's a side door that goes into the kitchen of the farm, Walnut Hill, and it's approximately 36 to 40 inches wide and about a 1.5 to 2 feet deep. It goes down pretty far. There's 3 stories of solid brick. There's no interior wood frame, which makes it good. It's all brick, because what I was reading, I always like to read the sidebars. They didn't like to put the wood in there because if there was a fire, that wood would just kind of shoot up through the brick, and it made it worse. But a solid brick house is very stable. The walls actually are 17 inches wide, or thick, however you want to say it. The windowsills are about that width too, which I loved. There's 3 more layers of brick on the house, which they called Wythes, W-Y-T-H-E-S. And I looked in actually Grace Dehart, if you're familiar with her, I had her book of early industries of Middletown, because I had no idea. I checked Hummelstown to see where they got the brick, and Hummelstown really didn't have anything that matched the date. But I looked in Grace's book, and there was a Robert P. Long brickyard in Middletown, and in 1843. That was a good, that matched pretty good. And it was at 29 North Union Street in Middletown. And it said they were all made by hand. And it was soon after that, years after that, that Robert P. Long brickyard started making manufactured brick. The brick on the table, I found this, well, when I moved to where I am now, and I'll explain that, but there was all kind of brick down there, and I wanted something to put around for a garden bed. And I just really found this now. It's a handmade brick, and what you'll see, what they used to do, It's handmade brick. And it's uneven, and it's, you can just tell it was handmade. But what they used to do, I found this one, I had to research this because I love to find out why. It has an indentation here, and they would put the brick this way, not this way. And they would fill that with mortar, and that would hold it. The idea was it wouldn't slide as much. It would hold better. Now, whether this brick is from Walnut Hill, I have no idea. I just know it was a brick that I brought up for my use. But you can look at it. I thought it was kind of interesting to find out. I'd like to read up on those things. So, okay, you'll see pictures of hand-hewn beams in the cellar. And since my husband was raised there from birth, he didn't take it like I did when I first moved there. I would go down in the basement and I would just be in awe. And I have pictures of them. They're hand hewn with a broadaxe, and you can see that. And the things are, I think, huge. But they're solid things. But what got me is they came from the woods down by the farmhouse, down by the creek. There's springs down there everywhere, but that came from those woods. And at the original thing, it had a gabled roof. That was original. It had mixed architecture. The cellar at that time had 4 windows and 1 door. It still did when I was there. The cellar floor at that time was dirt, and they put down wood slats. There was a fireplace. Now, my mother-in-law told me this, but I didn't get interested enough to keep questioning her, but she did mention that there was a fireplace in the cellar. And they evidently did a lot of, which they would at that time, do some cooking. They'd stay down there in the summertime because it would be cool. It's probably where the furnace is now. Who wants to know that? There's 2 tree trunks that always amazed me too. Go down in the cellar. Of course, they're going to have canned foods and stuff like that. But there are tree trunks, trees, down there on in the one back end, and they are that big around. They're solid trees, and they were notched out by a broadaxe, and there was 2 of them, and they would put wood boards on there, and that's what they used to store their canned goods. But I came into that house like, oh, I can't believe this. So, and then the cellar was covered mainly by the upper porch floor, so that it was covered, it was protected from the elements. I have no idea where the outhouse was. I never asked Betty where it was. The canning and laundry was done downstairs, and now we're going to have some fun, because they had the kitchen downstairs. It was a fireplace. Now this is in the 1800s. Okay. When I first moved there, I wanted to fix up the front of the cellar basement with some flowers, and I was digging around. I kept digging up all these oyster shells, and I thought, like, we're too far away for these oyster shells to be here. So, as I do, I went and looked it up. So now I have a book. I have a cookbook. I'm great for these. This was, let me get it. It's coming apart. This was a 1776 centennial cookbook that was put out in 1876. So you see, we're getting pretty close to, when they were there. Now, there's some of the recipes, and this is fun to go through. Remember I said there were oysters. If I can find it here. Wait a minute, I have to put it down. It's coming apart, so I have to put it down. It tells you what what they would do is they would have fresh oysters, and they bring them in barrels, I guess, depending on how much you like oysters, or just some small containers. Why can't I find it? It was telling you how to. Anyway, it told you that you had to change the water, almost every day. Change the water and have it brown. Put salt in it, and then you would feed them cornmeal to keep them alive. And evidently, as long as you changed the water, you had fresh oysters. So that explained why I kept digging up all these oyster shells, which was I had to find out. Now let's see. Here it is. You have to feed oysters. That's what I was looking for, I'm sorry. Wash them perfectly clean in a pan of water. Then lay them bottom downwards in a deep pan and pour over them water with a large quantity of salt. I can just see them down here doing this because I did find the oyster shell. Change the water every day. The salt should be previously dissolved in the water, allowing about 5 to 6 ounces of salt to each gallon of water. You may fatten them by putting oatmeal into the water every day. So there you go. If you want to fatten oysters, here's the way. And then I found, add these more. Oh, there it is. Now this is to preserve. Now you're going to think they don't have any electricity, okay? And they had to have, like, maybe the well was, or a spring was keeping things cool. To preserve your eggs. By adopting the following method, eggs have been kept good for 2 years. 1 bushel of quick lime, 2/3 ounces of salt, 8 ounces of cream tartar. Allison, you should try this. Mix the whole together with as much water as will reduce the composition to such a consistency that an egg, when put into it, will swim. And the other way would be that you could do it is you put them in shallow baskets that are open and hang them from nails in the cellar. But I thought that was pretty good. I like that. Now, I won't bore you with this, but what's this? Oh, this one got me. Now, this amazes me if you've ever read some of these old books, old cookbooks especially. Now, this is to preserve your fish in a living state. Fish may be served in a living state for 14 days or longer without water. Okay, Ed, this is what you do. You stop their mouths with a crumb of bread steeped in brandy, pouring a little brandy into them, then placing them in straw in a moderately cool situation. So there's how you can keep your fish alive. Oh, and one more, I'm sorry. This one got me too. Keep your meat. It's so hard to read. Oh, keeping meat fresh in hot weather. Now, they had to come up with something, I know. You couldn't be butchering every day, that's all there is to it. Place in a clean porcelain bowl and pour very hot water over the beef. Over it as soon as can, and then cover it with that boiling hot water. Then pour oil on top of the water. Now that seals it off. Makes sense sometimes. That seals the boiling water, sterilized it. Then you put oil over it, and that sealed it off. The air is thus quite excluded and the meat preserved. So if Barnes has a sale, you can always go and get some, and then be sure you do it this way. I had to have some fun. Okay, we're getting here. There evidently was down at Walnut Hill, this is in the old times, there was a smokehouse and a bakehouse in the backside of the brick farmhouse. There was a wooden porch in the house, and they said that there was a red rose climbing on one end. Now I have a shadow box here, and Betty must have saved, there was one peg from that wooden porch, and I had it in the shadow box. There was a fireplace in the kitchen, and I have a picture. I have a picture that I took when I was there of the kitchen where I think it was, and I also have pictures of it in the cellar. It's a stone support that's down there to support the large fireplace in the kitchen. In the rooms, there was usually that farmhouses were divided in rooms into 4 each. There were 4 rooms on the second floor, and there were 2 rooms for the dining room that's there now, and which left 1 large kitchen. There was a fenced path to the woods down there for the cattle to go down, and there's my husband always said there's a concrete trough down there that's buried. They kept sinking, and but there's a concrete trough down there that is supplied by springs, and that's where that's where they watered the cattle. There also was when I was there, we kind of looking around, at least I was, and there was a house dump down there in the woods, and I wanted to keep going through, but it was a little bit too dangerous because of the cut glass. We did find some things that was at the house dump. The first barn in 1857. The house was built in 1856. I had no idea what it looked like. So that was the first barn. It was built by Michael, Joseph's father. It was destroyed by lightning in 1876. And Joseph rebuilt it in 1876. It was quite a few months later. Let's see. And Joseph, okay, I might as well look at these. Joseph died in 1893. He was 58 years old, and his widow, Margaret Rebecca Alleman, sold the farm to Henry's brother, Martin Luther. That was Joseph's nephew. That was in 1906. In 1930s, Martin Luther sold the farm to his brother, Ira Faber Alleman, and his wife, Mary Carver. I can do this. Anyway, I should not do this. That is Ira Faber. That is his wife, Mary Carver. This was Mary Elizabeth Alleman, or Betty. That was her brother, Ira Jr. Tell me who they were. But these are the sisters. Jane, Sally, Rachel was not born yet. But I like this picture, and it's mainly because this is the second barn. It shows a picture of the second barn. There's a bank barn with an indent there for to keep things dry. This was a wagon shed. So, and then there's also the barn path. Oh, I have it here, sorry. This is Eleanor, and Sally or Sloan, and then Rachel, and then my mother-in-law, Mary. And that's Jane and Ira Faber. But I mainly like this picture because it does show you, it has a star up here, which I would have never known. But it does have a star, and it was fairly good shape. Okay, now my mother-in-law, remember I married Richard L. Lewis Shireman Jr. And my mother-in-law and father-in-law, Mary Elizabeth Alleman and Richard Lewis Shireman Sr., they bought the farm in 1943, and they They had 2 children, which I said was Richard L. and Stephen D. The 15, yeah. Well, there's the second barn right there, and that's a wagon shed. So that's a good picture. That's the only picture we have, really, these pictures of the second barn. And there you go. What else is next here? Oh, okay. This is still the second barn, which I was glad to have. This is my husband. This was my husband and his brother Stephen. And you could see how there was just a post fence around. You can go on to the next one. Okay. This was either a milk house or a cooling house. That's their father, Richard Sr., and that's Richard Jr. and Steve. But I wanted, this is only one we have that shows the other outbuildings. You can go. Yeah. And at the time, this always amazed me. This was dirt at the time that Mary and